I'm quite a simple man when it comes to music. When I see a band signed to a label that I like, I get happy. Fearless, Hopeless, Pure Noise, Epitaph, Scenarium. The list is too long, but each one has a specific niche and even some crossover. Way back in 1989, a label by the name of Victory Records would form, and over the years they would acquire a lot of bands, some that they got praise for signing and some that they got criticism for signing. Poor design of the skyline, they really didn't deserve the hate that they got. Now, the whole point of this series is that I have to point out the bad stuff now before we get to the good things, but Victory Records do not have the best reputation. Some of their worst crimes are mostly due to label founder Tony Brummel being a Tony Bummel. He once issued statements in Hawthorne Heights' name to try and sabotage sales for Neo's new album at the time. The label has screwed so many bands out of royalties, trying to gaslight Day to Remember when they wanted out of their contract with Victory, and holding the fucking sword of Damocles over the heads of the good lads in Streetlight Manifesto. And that'll basically be the video layout for this. Part 1 is going to focus on the earliest cases of bands calling out Victory for their shitty practices, and parts 2 and 3 will cover more specific situations to me. And I guess that I should explain what I mean by that. See, this video was initially just going to talk about the year 2013 for Victory, and don't worry, that year will come up quite a bit in this video. The reasoning for that is because 2013 was a great year for music, and I consider it a huge transitional period both for me and many of the bands I listened to back then and still do today. But another reason I'm not just focusing on that one year is because there are issues that have been around for longer than that, and it feels a bit pointless to focus on stuff that happened 11 years ago now. Doubly so because Victory doesn't technically exist anymore as of 2019, now just distributing stuff for other labels all under the Concord banner. But as the saying goes, you can't keep a good dog down, unless you merge that dog with a bigger label and make it so that they don't really exist. I think one of the first controversies we're talking about with Victory is something that should be a bare minimum for any label signing a hot new act, but it also serves as foreshadowing for stuff we'll get to later. That is obviously money and how much a label will pay the band signed to them, and Victory either didn't pay their bands enough or sometimes anything. Which is odd, as the label was always good at making the band signed to it look good. This is the only directly positive thing that I'll say about Victory itself, but they had a great way of promoting a band's tours, merch, posters, songs, videos, anything to do with marketing and promoting, Victory were always scarily good with. Shame that a lot of bands still didn't see any cash from that, let alone from their album sales. However, this series is about the positives, so let's talk about the positives of the early era of Victory Records. They were responsible for bringing metalcore, emo and pop punk to wider audiences, with the likes of A Day to Remember, Self-Esteem and Trey in between The Buried and Me, just to name a few. Seriously, if you can think of an album you loved from the mid to late 2000s, chances are you saw that Bulldogs label slapped in the corner. And now for a bit of back-end positivity, as like I said, this will be about some of those bands speaking ill of Victory among others. Shay told of Silverstein and John Henry of Darkest Hour never got paid for the work that they did for the label, along with the trade guitarist Dan Jacobs calling out Tony's general scummy nature. And oh boy does it get scummy. So you know that Neo thing that I mentioned in the intro of the video? Well, it turns out that Tony Bummel forged letters under Hawthorne Heights' name to divert traffic using a lot of racial terms that put the band under some very undeserved scrutiny. The band have since restored their reputation for something that wasn't their fault in the first place, so it's all good. And of course there was Design of the Skyline, a band doomed from the moment that they signed the contract. They were not given a good deal, and they didn't give Victory permission to release their song Surrounded by Silence, getting a lot of negative comments for, again, something that was not their fault. But in interviews since, the band have commented that they weren't ready and were a very different style to the label's other alumni, being an avant-garde metal act on a label with more carefully constructed metalcore bands. It's a shame, as they seem like really nice people, and they've even been teasing a new album since 2019, so let's hope that they can find a good label to release it through, and I'm just saying, Pure Noise is always an option. It's right there, lads. Even besides those, a lot of the bands I've mentioned thankfully still have careers and are signed to better labels, or in some rare cases have even made their own, even while Victory was still active. I'm not going to say that I'm sad that Victory are gone now, but they did provide a lot of good memories for me in my mid and late teens, mostly for the bands signed to them and how good said bands are. Now that we've talked about the bands who went through the ringer while signed to Victory, I wanted to take the chance for this segment and the next one to talk about specific bands. And for this bit I'm talking about one of the best known and yet oddly shortest tenured bands with the label in A Day to Remember. I won't lie, this is a band that took me a while to get into during my teen years. I was a pop punk boy, sure, and I liked it when these guys did that, and it would take me until my 20s to welcome metalcore into my life, but this was a band doing both. I wish that I could go back in time and tell younger Jakey just how good these guys were doing it, because he may have been less biased then. Maybe. Now, the band's entire discography on Victory stretches from their 2007 sophomore effort For Those Who Have Heart to 2010's What Separates Me From You, with 2009's Homesick nestled neatly in between those albums. And that was seen as the band's boom period, with tracks like Right Where You Want Me To Be, I Made of Wax Layer, What Are You Made Of, their cover of Kelly Clarkson's Since You've Been Gone, and also what's seen as the band's signature song, The Downfall of Us All. Again, I initially wasn't super big on these guys at the time, and my first song by them was the Since You've Been Gone cover, but then I heard Downfall of Us All and I sort of started to get what the hype was about. Then I thought to myself, it's always hand, fuck it, they got a new album out, let's spin it. And I'm so glad I did. As first albums go for bands I didn't think I would get into, what separates me from you defied my expectations to the best degree possible. And it's damning as that album is the band's last official release through Victory. Bear with me as it's going to get a little bit heated. So first of all, the album was delayed until November 2010 and the band were planning on spending most of 2011 touring to try and promote it, but SpaghettiOs, Victory forgot to pay the band. What a twist. The band filed a lawsuit claiming breach of contract and unpaid royalties for the measly sum of $75,000, and Victory replied by saying it was because the band wouldn't fulfill their 5-album contract. Keep in mind again that what separates was their 3rd album for Victory. To the band's credit, they did try and keep things professional, not wanting to disparage Victory's name during the lawsuit and instead wanting to focus on releasing music for their fans. Then in 2012 they started teasing their new album Common Courtesy, which would be announced at a show that they played in New Jersey in May of that year. An album that, due to many delays like self-releasing the album, wouldn't see the light of day until October the 8th, 2013. And like all good things that come to those who wait, Common Courtesy would receive acclaim, mostly for the band taking as many swings as possible at Victory. They were being professional during the lawsuit, sure, but when they got the rights to release this album literally days before it actually came out, all that professionalism went out the window. And it's also my favourite album by the band, City of Alcala, Violence Enough is Enough, Right Back at It Again, I'm Already Gone, Dead and Buried, and what has to be my favourite ADTR song ever penned, Sometimes You're the Hammer, Sometimes You're the Nail. An album that stands as a true act of defiance, and it may be, in my opinion, the 2nd best listenable example of 2 giant middle fingers for your boss. So you might be wondering, what's the best example? I'm glad you asked. So before I really get into the meat and potatoes of this bit, this video is sponsored by, no it's not. I wanted to say that one band I was going to cover was Counterparts and their incredible 2013 album, The Difference Between Hell and Home, but when I tried looking into it, I couldn't find anything about the relationship between the band and Victory, but I will fill out this paragraph by saying that Hell and Home rules and you should go and listen to it. It's also not what this part of the video is about, but you read the title of this bit or at the very least caught a glimpse of it and are now rewinding to check before skipping to the present. This part of the video is obviously talking about Streetlight Manifesto. I think a friend of mine linked me their song Would You Be Impressed at some point in late 2012, and then around that time I found out that the band would be dropping the album The Hands That Thieve in April 2013, an album that was supposed to see the light of day in November 2012, then again in February 2013, before finally being put out for the world to see on the 30th of April 2013. There was a lot of reasons for the delays, the main one being the label allegedly and quite possibly actually withholding pre-orders of the album that were made through the band's web store. The band also wanted to release a live EP, that being the only live recording of their work in existence that the label also stopped from being released. Victory also tried to stop the band singer Thomas Kalnoky under a solid name of Tokay from releasing an alternate version of The Hands That Thieve titled The Hand That Thieves, which is just all the same songs on the original album, just done acoustically. And the band had to boycott their own merch and music from anywhere Victory was attached, basically having to tell their fans to go to Streetlight's website to get the stuff that they wanted. And even though the band didn't have physical copies of the album despite all the pre-orders being made, the band decided to include mystery gift items for fans who pre-ordered, that gift being a digipack with a blank disc, a blank label, and a 24-page booklet with poems and pictures. How lovely. I can only assume that those blank CDs were just copies of The Hands That Thieve, which, if it is true, is a fucking genius way to slip that under Victory's radar. As for the album itself, honestly, of my 3 favourite albums released through Victory in 2013, it might be my favourite of the lot for one reason. Subtlety. If Common Courtesy is a sledgehammer swinging back at Victory, The Hands That Thieve is a scalpel, dissecting the label precisely and done in a way that had more feel-good moments for me. There's just a big sense of freedom that the album has that I really love. The 3 of us, they broke him down, The Hands That Thieve, toe-to-toe with any sort of certainty, and I'd list more, but I just said the names of 5 out of the 10 songs on the album. But the album's title track is one of my favourite songs that the band has ever done, perfectly capturing the shit that the band had to go through just to get this album out, and showing them triumphant at the end of it. Sadly, after the album was released, the problems with Victory weren't over yet, as the label would sue the band for either $1 million or $5 million in 2015, because that's what the greedy cunts of Victory needed, more money. Victory stated that part of the reason was because the band didn't fulfill a 4-album deal, even though if you count their collaborative covers album in 2010, they did 5 albums, all while signed to Victory. Tony, for fuck's sake, make it make sense, mate. That lawsuit started officially in 2015, and again, the irony of a label known for not paying their artists wanting something between $1 to $5 million from one of their artists isn't lost on me. Another reason the label gave for the lawsuit was for copyright infringement for Tokay's version of the album, for songs that he wrote in the first place, which isn't a nice thing, but it's hilarious to think about, especially in hindsight. But we have to end things on a positive note, right? And here is that positive note. Streetlight and Victory reached an agreement in 2017 which meant that the band could finally leave the label, and Victory sold the band their master recordings for an unknown amount. If I had to guess though, I would say it's in the $1 to $5 million realm. But the fact is that the band are finally free and have been cooking a new album for a while now, and as of late April this year, it's apparently close to being done and I for one can't wait for it. So even with all of the douche nugget things that Victory did, the pair of good and awesome music overcame the pair of corporate greed and systemic bigotry. You should go and check out all of the bands that I mentioned in this video if and when you have the time, but especially check out the difference between Hell and Home, Common Courtesy and The Hands That Thief. If only to remind yourself that good music isn't that hard to find, good bands are easy to come by, and also to remind yourself that, hey, it's not all bad. Thank you all for watching this video. This is probably one of my favourite ones to put together for this series so far, even though it's only the third one. I did do a bit more research into this one because I just kind of wanted to look more into it to get my facts a bit more correct. 'Cause again, I could still be completely wrong. I didn't pull from a lot of sources, and I'm not going to cite them. But yeah, if you want to find them, just Google it. Because I'm too lazy now. I started scripting this video on a lot of the sources like a couple of months ago. So yeah, it's been a while. But I'm glad that this thing is out now, and I hope you really, really enjoy it. And I'll see you very, very soon. Quite possibly on Tuesday for the first of the Violent Delights pay-per-view and the Golden Path tournament for my EFED, and that's going to be a lot of fun, which means I'm going to be putting the Go Home show parts up tonight. So I'll see you all for that, and as always, thank you for watching, you're awesome. Bye bye.